From your point of view, when this fighter aircrafts F-16 could be in Ukraine, and how much the first supply could be?
Well, let's be clear, it's not going to be tomorrow, and maybe also not the day after tomorrow. Transferring this kind of technology to Ukraine is a very complicated process. First of all, there's a training of the pilots. That has already started a few months ago, but it's not finished yet. That's number one. Number two, both Denmark and the Netherlands, and hopefully also some other countries, but right now only Denmark and Netherlands, have to identify how many aircrafts they can actually transfer to Ukraine. I mean, a number has been pronounced by both countries, but it doesn't mean this will be the exact number. So this has to be identified too. And number three, let's not forget, before those jet fighters can go to Ukraine, the United States also has to give its final approval because it's American technology. So, you know, it's a very complex project. The most important thing that there is a commitment, but maybe it still might take a few months, maybe 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. This might be the most realistic timeline. So hoping that these jet fighters will be there tomorrow or in 1 week, that's not realistic. Let's think in terms of months.
This long time of supply, is it just bureaucracy, or there is some political issues or economical or some technical?
Well, I think it's a bit of everything, right? I mean, it's definitely also bureaucracy. I mean, it takes paperwork to transfer this kind of this kind of technology to Ukraine. As I said, there's also the training of the pilots that has to be completed yet. I mean, the F-16 is a highly complicated machine to maneuver. You do not learn this just like that in a few months. I mean, pilots require extensive amount of training before they can actually fly this machine. So that takes time as well. And three, I think there's still some political issues as well. I mean, the West has been highly reluctant to transfer F-16s to Ukraine since the beginning of the war, for the very simple fact that the West has always said, we do not want to transfer technology to Ukraine that would allow Ukraine to attack Russia on its territory. Now, if you give F-16s to Ukraine, that is a technology that would allow Ukraine to do that. So even though the Netherlands and the Denmark have now broken this red line, which I think is a very good thing they did, I still believe many countries within the NATO alliance, for instance, are reluctant still or hesitant to transfer this technology. And one of those countries that is also still a little bit hesitant to do that is the United States itself. So yes, the United States, Washington has said they would approve the transfer of F-16 to Ukraine, but I'm not sure it's with a wholehearted attitude that this is happening.
Mm-hmm. From your point of view, does Ukraine have enough capacity to maintain all this technique, all equipment?
Right. Well, this is the other problem, of course. Once you have F-16s, you need to maintain these machines. You know, imagine you have a Jaguar or a very fancy car. You need to go to the garage regularly to maintain your car. It's just the same thing with the F-16. So the question now is then, where will those F-16 be maintained? I mean, will there be some capabilities being built in the west of Ukraine? Will the maintenance happen in Poland, for instance, or in some other EU country? And also, once those F-16s are being used in Ukraine, will the West also deliver the replacement pieces? You know, imagine something gets broken. Ukraine doesn't have these pieces to replace. So again, the West will have to jump in. So these are all questions now that are being discussed between Ukraine and the Western partners, how to logistically organize this. And this also requires time again.
Mm-hmm. Could it be considered as a step toward NATO integration from Ukrainian side?
Well, you know, if you ask my personal opinion, I think that Ukraine is already integrated in NATO. It's just, you know, from a technical perspective, from a military perspective, Ukraine is already fighting like a NATO country. So the F-16s, of course, is just another step in that direction that has already been taken. But, you know, Ukraine now flying the F-16 doesn't mean that NATO membership is behind the corner. We all know very well that your NATO membership is not a technical question, it's not a military question, it's a political question. And whether you fly F-16s or F-35 or operate any kind of Western technology, that doesn't mean that you will become a member of NATO as long as certain NATO member states put their political veto on Ukraine's membership.
Which benefits could get Ukraine from usage of these aircrafts? What it may change on the battlefield? Which changes? Why it's so important? Or maybe it's not so important.
So I think there's two important elements here, why the F-16 matters. First of all, Ukraine has been very strong on lands, on fighting on the lands, but Ukraine still lacks air superiority. We see that Russia is still able to fly in Ukrainian airspace without much restriction. And an F-16 will basically improve Ukrainian control of its own skies. That's number one, very important. Because right now, with the limited amount of mix that Ukraine has, Ukraine is almost unable to really have this air superiority in your own sky. Number two, everything that the West has given you, the tanks, the javelins, whatever, this is all based on what we call fighting with combined arms. So NATO has told Ukraine, here are the weapons, and you must now fight with a strategy called combined arms. Combined arms means that you attack on land while you protect your assets on land from the air. So we've given you everything on the land, but we've given you nothing for the air. So right now, when you look at the Ukrainian counteroffensive, one of the reasons why it's going so slow is because you do have everything for the land, but you're not able right now, Ukraine is not able to really protect its advances from the air. We see that Russia is shooting at the tanks, is shooting at the MIVs from the air. Now, these F-16s will again allow Ukraine to protect the advances on land by covering the air with the F-16s. That is, just standard NATO technology and standard NATO military strategy. So what we've done so far, basically, the West, is that we've given you a very fancy car, but we haven't given you the wheels yet. And the F-16s are basically the wheels that you are missing to effectively fight with the weapons that we've been giving you.